Port of Baltimore is one of the nation's largest shipping hubs. And I've been there a number of times as a senator and as a vice president. It handles a record amount of cargo last year. It's also the top port in America for both imports and exports of automobiles and light trucks. Around 850,000 vehicles go through that port every single year. And we're going to get it up and running again as soon as possible. 15,000 jobs depend on that port. And we're going to do everything we can to protect those jobs and help those workers.
Those workers. Joe Biden, hey, he stepped up. He's talking about it. I guess it's not East Palestine, Ohio. It must be important to them electorally. What other possible explanation could there be? He sounded like he had taken his Prevagen, too. Well, happy Wednesday to you, and welcome back. I want to get right into this. Former CBS News and former 60 Minutes correspondent, award-winning journalist and controversial journalist Lara Logan yesterday took to Twitter and said that multiple intel sources are telling her that the Baltimore Bridge collapse was absolutely brilliant strategic attack. It was an absolutely brilliant strategic attack. Those words are in quotation marks, Lara Logan. On U.S. critical infrastructure, most likely a cyber attack, and our intelligence agencies know it, she wrote. In information warfare terms, they just divided the U.S. along the Mason-Dixon line exactly like the Civil War. The second busiest strategic roadway in the nation for hazardous materials is now down for 4 to 5 years. And it turns out that this bridge in this section of 695, kind of a go-around portion of I-95. I-95 goes up and down the East Coast of the United States. And when you get to urban areas, you have these go-rounds. We have them in Washington, D.C. also. And this particular bridge in this 695 section was apparently specifically designed for hazardous materials transport that they didn't want going through the tunnels in Baltimore and on other roadways. So as she points out that it may take years, and it likely will take years, particularly these days. We don't do things the way we used to do things, lickety-split, but the bridge was specifically built to move hazardous materials, fuel, diesel, propane gas, nitrogen, highly flammable materials, chemicals, and oversized cargo that can't fit in the tunnels there, that the supply chain on that front is now crippled on this portion of the East Coast. Going to have to find a workaround for that. And it may not be a piece of cake because, they built this bridge specifically to deal with the transport of these materials. And now it's an issue. She says, make no mistake, Lara Logan does, this was an extraordinary attack in terms of planning, timing, and execution. Now, this is her allegation based on, she says, conversations with intelligence officials who keep track of these sorts of things. The FBI director did warn us weeks ago about the People's Republic of China, the Chinese communists plotting internet-based attacks, hack attacks on our critical infrastructure. And the FBI director said it just like that a few weeks ago while under oath up on Capitol Hill. Not that he's the most trustworthy person in the world, but according to Lara Logan, an intelligence source told her, quote, they have figured out how to bring us down. As long as you stay away from the teeth of the U.S. military, you can pick the U.S. apart. We are arrogant and ignorant. Lethal combination. Obama said they would fundamentally change America, and they did. The fundamental transformation of America is what he promised. There's no doubt about that. We are in a free fall ride on a roller coaster right now. No brakes, just picking up speed, said the intelligence official to Lara Logan. Now, video footage shows the cargo ship never got in the approach lane in the channel there in the Baltimore harbor, and said you have to be in the channel before you get into that turn. But the ship didn't make it there. We saw that the lights went off. Lots of crazy things. You should have had a harbor pilot to pilot the ship through those waters. And it's there are a lot of questions that need to be asked. If we only had a curious and intelligent and informed news media, that would be very helpful. We unfortunately do not have that. Lara Logan also says for every $100 that goes into the city of Baltimore, $12 come from the shipping in the port there. And Joe Biden also told us about a huge, 12,000 jobs? Is that what Joe Biden said yesterday? 14,000 jobs related to the harbor, and the harbor is now shut down. And, it's time to get whatever we need to get in there, the Army Corps of Engineers or the Navy or the Glomar Explorer or whatever it is we need to get in there to lift these obstructions out of the mouth of the harbor. Once the recovery operation for the 6 men that are missing is wrapped up, it's time to get moving, chop, chop. I saw that there is a cruise ship that left out of Baltimore, and they're at sea. They can't come back into Baltimore, and there's no place nearby to go. So they're going to Norfolk, Virginia, this cruise ship, and everyone will be dropped off there and get a bus ride back to Baltimore. Now, let's go to Lara Logan, because she did this interview after posting on X a lot of information about, she says, her conversations with intelligence officials. And there are now, again, we've got a lot of government officials saying, just stay calm, it's just an accident. The ship lost electricity temporarily and then veered into the bridge, and there's nothing to see here. And that may very well be the case. It's unfortunate that over the last, how many years is it now? Coming up on 10 years, our government has been lying to us so constantly. Our government agencies, the intelligence community, tampering in the 2020 presidential election with penitentiary face Brennan and the felonious 51 signing that fraudulent letter about how the New York Post reporting on Hunter Biden's laptop had all the earmarks of Russian disinformation. In reality, the letter from our own intelligence officials had all the earmarks of Russian disinformation. Have the FBI going after the political enemies of the Democrat Party, the IRS going after the political enemies of the Democrat Party, the Justice Department going after the political enemies of the Democrat Party, prosecutors in Atlanta and New York and Washington going after the political enemies of the Democrat Party. And these people are not truth tellers. They're sinister and nefarious actors, smug and obviously corrupt. Now let's go to Lara Logan, again, who has a mixed reputation, to be sure. However, she is also a longtime award-winning journalist with deep sources in the intelligence community. And this, she says, is the source, the intelligence community, of her information. Lara Logan talking to Steve Bannon on his podcast, talking about what she has been told by intelligence officials.
I didn't make this up. These are not my words, right? I'm talking to people who are on the inside, some who are on active duty, some who are retired, and everyone, literally, from critical infrastructure in Department of Homeland Security to the intelligence agencies, they know there's no other. This is a cyber attack.
This is a cyber attack, she says. Now, I'm not a cyber attacker, so I can't tell you. I know that the Chinese have thousands and thousands of people cyber attacking the United States all day and all night. I know the Iranians have huge cyber attack capabilities and operations. And I know that there are bad guys out there that want to commit all kinds of chaos, and that we have a government that is not operating at the highest level, because of, well, a variety of factors that aren't necessarily very important right now. But she says that her intelligence sources are telling her that this is a cyber attack. How do you get into the ship? Can you take the controls of the ship? I have no idea. Can you just shut it down? I mean, I know that everything in a ship this size is going to be computer controlled and electronically controlled. I've been on the bridges of many ships. I have driven the USS Enterprise. I know that a lot of this is fly-by-wire, as they say in aviation, and you don't grab the big wheel on a 1,000-foot ship and turn it like it's a 40-foot sailboat. It's more complicated than that. So if you lose electricity, then I can see how you'd lose control of the ship. But really, there's no way to stop it. They didn't have an opportunity for reverse thrusters or to turn the ship, hard to port to vector it away from the bridge. What do I know? I wasn't on the bridge at the time. Lara Logan talking to her sources.
This is a brilliant, well-planned strategic attack on one of the most important supply chains in the United States of America. The only other one is in the western side in California. That's the only one that's busier. And what you have done, you now have shut it down. And when I talk about hazardous materials, what are we talking about here? This is refined fuels, right? This is propane gas. This is diesel. This is fuel. This is flammable materials. This is oversized loads, nitrogen, chemicals. Everything that you need for your economy to move has literally just been shut down for 4 to 5 years.
And all of this is a big deal. Now, 6 men were killed. They were a road crew working at 1:30 a.m., filling potholes on the center span, apparently, of the bridge. And they have families and friends, and they're human beings, they're fellow human beings. And it's good that the death toll was not greater because there was a swift action by law enforcement at the bridge that shut down traffic going onto the bridge, and that is huge. Now, if you're looking for maximum damage there, you would want the bridge to collapse at rush hour if you're, communist China. But who knows? If it is a cyber attack, as she says, intelligence officials are telling her, then at this point, they're feeling their way through what they can do, what they can accomplish. And then again, it may be an accident where the electricity went out and the ship veered into the bridge, and it was a tragic accident. Lara Logan, yesterday, talking about what her sources are telling her.
For those people who say, well, the FBI, isn't it interesting? Christopher Wray just put this big counterterrorism guy, he put him in charge of the FBI office of Baltimore just yesterday. And this is the guy that's out in front of the cameras already. Well, isn't that amazing, right? Do you believe in coincidences? I don't. I don't believe in coincidences anymore. None of this happens by chance. This happens by design. And the problem that we have is that people in power in this country are complicit in the breakdown of American infrastructure and America's defenses.
Well, and I wouldn't rule that out entirely. We've seen a lot of incompetence or something resembling incompetence in our government over the last handful of years. And since you brought up Christopher Wray again, it's just about 25 seconds. Let's Christopher Wray under oath on Capitol Hill recently.
There has been far too little public focus on the fact that PRC hackers are targeting our critical infrastructure. China's hackers are positioning on American infrastructure in preparation to wreak havoc and cause real-world harm to American citizens and communities if and when China decides the time has come to strike.
Now, I'm not a cyber attack expert. I've never attacked anybody's cyber. But I know that you can't rule anything out, before the blood dries. And that seems to be happening. So I think questions ought to be asked. Questions ought to be answered. And we shouldn't assume. You know what happens when we assume? We shouldn't assume that there's nothing to see here. We should assume that we have an intellectually and journalistically lazy press corps that will likely fail to ask the appropriate questions. But we'll see what we can do. We're at 888-630-9625.
Remain calm. All is well. All is well.
Hey, it's Chris Plant. Excited to tell you about our July 2024 Listener Sea Cruise. We'll be sailing around the British Isles, visiting Scotland and Ireland. Please join us. Visit chrisplantcruise.com. Okay, I've got a story I want to share with you from last year about cargo cranes in American ports using Chinese software, Communist Party, and how a year ago in Congress, there were Republicans sounding the alarm that this was a security threat to our infrastructure. So I want to share that with you. But right now, let's go to the telephones. Let's go to Doug calling from North Carolina. And I think it's North Carolina this time. Is this the North Carolina that's in North Carolina? Doug, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Hey, Chris, great show. Yes, I'm calling from North Carolina. I'm a graduate of the United States Merchant Marine Academy and sailed as an engineer aboard a number of steamships, including 4 tours as a chief engineer.
Wow.
So I have some insights that I think are relevant, but some of it is also speculation.
Okay.
Coming in and out of port, we're going to have 2 generators operating all the time, 2 full-service generators. If we lose power on both of those, there's a backup generator that'll kick in and supply power for roughly half the ship's equipment, including 1 steering gear motor.
Okay.
So that's with the light. When I saw the lights going on and off, it suggests to me that it was a steamship as opposed to a diesel. But again, I'm speculating on that.
Okay.
I find that diesel generators tend to be more reliable in terms of not losing power. In English, if you lose fires in the boiler, you lose steam pressure. Steam pressure gets too low, the generators take themselves off the line. And it would take time for the boilers to refire to provide enough steam for the steam generators to come back online.
Now, did the video, you've watched the video again and again, right? Did the video make sense to you?
It did.
It did.
But you also mentioned something about thrusters.
Yes.
I don't know if the ship had bow thrusters, stern thrusters, or both or neither.
Right.
But what I saw was that ship took a quick turn to starboard to hit the pillar. And so that seemed really odd to me that it went to starboard.
Me too. He might have dropped anchor. There's a report that he dropped anchor.
I don't know how effective an anchor would be because there might not have been enough time for the chain to get onto the riverbed to slow the ship down.
Right.
To stop the ship.
Right, but it did take a hard right turn, which, what does that tell you?
Yeah. What it tells me is that I think they lost as what we call lose electricity with the rudder already engaged to go to starboard, which doesn't seem right. It doesn't seem like a good thing to me. Doesn't seem prudent to me.
Right.
Now, also, I don't know, but presume they came out of the Dundalk terminal. They would have been going maybe 4 or 6 knots at that point in time until they saw some more open water. There's not a whole lot of steerage at that point in time due to the ship's engine.
I tell you what, Doug, hang in there for me for a couple of minutes, would you? I got another question for you. All right, now, if there is anything nefarious about this Baltimore Harbor incident, then we certainly want to be made aware of it and respond appropriately. And if it is nothing other than a peculiar fluke of an accident where the power went out and the ship veered into a pier supporting a bridge and collapsed a bridge, well then, there will be lessons to learn from that as well. But in the, in this ever-changing world in which we're living, it's a Paul McCartney lyric there. You just never know. There are a lot of bad actors out there, and we, the United States of America, target of bad actors as well. And I want to get to a story that I have to share with you. Congress concerned about Chinese cranes in American seaports across the country, and the software in Congress was sounding the alarm on this last year. So I want to share that with you. But right now we still have Doug on the line. Doug, who is a graduate of the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy and is a seafaring man and knows whereof he speaks when it comes to big ships. Now, Doug, thank you for hanging in there. I appreciate it. And you said that talking about the generators, and there should be a backup generator. When you saw in the video the lights going out, you said, "Oh, that's you've got a term for it," and you're not quite sure about the ship, whether it's diesel or steam. But I guess what I would ask you is, did you see anything, or have you heard any reliable information that has you scratching your head and saying that doesn't make any sense?
The only thing that didn't make sense to me was seeing the ship veer to the starboard direction.
Well, that's a big deal, and that's when it crashed into the bridge. I mean, if it had veered to the left, then we wouldn't be talking about this today because it wouldn't have hit the bridge.
Agreed. And I have to correct you on something. My seafaring days ended a number of years ago, but I still remember enough to give an intelligent assessment of what I saw.
Well, a graduate of the Merchant Marine Academy. How many years did you spend at sea?
12.
12 years. Okay. And how many different ships?
Oh, probably 15.
Okay. How many countries?
More than I can count.
Is that right? That's fun. More than you get. You've never sat down and looked at a map to count your countries?
I'm gonna guess somewhere around 30, 35.
Ah, okay. Okay, so you're doing repeat runs. You're on ships that are going from here to there and then back again in many instances, right? Okay. All right. So what you found curious and perhaps inexplicable is why it took a hard turn to the starboard just before it crashed into the pier supporting the bridge. And had it gone straight, we might not be talking about this. Had it gone to the port to the left, we wouldn't be talking about it. And the lights going on and off. Have you seen that before on ships that you've been on?
No, we were successful at keeping the lights on during my sailing days.
Yeah.
That's the good news.
Yeah.
But again, it just really, as part of procedures, they test the steering gear before getting underway, within an hour or two of getting underway.
Right.
And also, same coming into port.
Yeah, you want to make sure that you can steer the thing. It's a billion or a couple of $1 billion of somebody's property, the shipping company, and then all the cargo on board. And then, of course, you crash into a bridge, you get billions more in damage. It's why these matters are taken very seriously. And you have a pilot, right? You're going to have a local Baltimore pilot board the ship when it's before it gets underway, either at the pier or wherever. And the pilot is going to be navigating the ship out of the Baltimore harbor, right?
Well, I believe news reports said there were 2 pilots. So my guess is they had what's called a docking pilot to get the ship away from the dock and out, perhaps past the key bridge, and then a harbor pilot to take it to the sea buoy.
Yeah. Yeah, and then a small boat comes out, and the pilots hop off of the ship down at the water level onto a small boat that brings them back into the harbor, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
And that's so. There will be essentially black boxes that'll tell what the rudder position was during the voyage, and what also you'll have a course indicator that's on a black box too.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I'll let the forensics handle that part.
Yeah.
I can't speak to how much computer equipment was on board that ship. Computer equipment started coming aboard. Computerized gear started coming aboard as I left the Merchant Marine 20 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, Doug. Any final thought you want to share with the audience before you get back to your life?
Just enjoy your show.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Doug, thanks very much for calling in. I appreciate it very much. The New York Times headline today, questions swirl over Baltimore Bridge Collapse. That's the radical left-wing extremists of the Democrat Party at the New York Times. They're not really journalists at all, but, questions over the bridge and the ship and the crew. What was the crew doing? And they got some splaining to do because this is a very big deal. This whole thing is a very big deal. Now, let me share with you a story here. And it was actually sent to me by a friend, and I didn't even find this one myself, but it's a remarkable story to be sure. It's from a year ago, from almost exactly a year ago, April 3rd of 2023. And the Fox Business people over there, Gordon Lubold, wrote the story, Congress seeks details on spying risks from Chinese cargo cranes. Sure, lawmakers call for hearings amid growing concerns of surveillance or sabotage at U.S. ports. U.S. ports. You know, that's what we're talking about here. Top lawmakers who oversee the Department of Homeland Security want to hold hearings to obtain access to classified and unclassified government documents that expose potential security vulnerabilities posed by dozens of Chinese-made cranes, the FBI director talking about Chinese hackers and so on, at American ports across the country. It is, quote, extremely worrisome, end quote, that about 80% of American port cranes use Chinese software that is manufactured by a Chinese company, said House Committee on Homeland Security Chairman Congressman Mark Green, Republican from Tennessee, in a statement. He said, on behalf of the American people, this committee is demanding answers on the risks these cranes pose to U.S. cybersecurity and the resilience of our critical infrastructure, just what FBI Director Christopher Wray was talking about on Capitol Hill a couple of weeks ago, which is a core aspect of the Homeland Security mission. So this is a year ago, and it's the intelligence community. I'm sure they've been stonewalling Congress ever since. But the demand for more information follows a Wall Street Journal article, March 5th of last year, that detailed for the first time some of the security concerns posed by large cranes, which are made by state-owned Shanghai Zhenhua Heavy Industries in China and are used in most American ports. I got to tell you, we are dumber than we've ever been. Just amazing. Now, this company, ZPMC, because we have to abbreviate everything, has ties to the People's Liberation Army, the PLA, the Chinese Communist military, who are targeting the United States, according to lawmakers, and that the company participates in military-civil fusion. The cranes are equipped with Chinese-made software that could be used to surveil or manipulate port operations. Wait a minute. Manipulate port operations? The Chinese, the communists? Are you kidding? No evidence has emerged that Beijing has used the cranes to conduct nefarious activity at any American ports, officials said. Now, this is quite fascinating, and Chinese officials, of course, dismiss the concerns as paranoia. Oh, really? I'm paranoid? You're commies. Cut it out. And an attempt to obstruct trade and economic cooperation with China. Yeah. And honestly, they've got these cranes in Los Angeles and San Pedro and elsewhere because, Congress seeks details on spying risks from Chinese cargo cranes. And did these hearings ever take place? I don't know. But you got to worry about the commies because they are commies. And this is what commies do. They destroy the world and they kill people. Just for 100 years, since they came out of the closet. That's the thing. All right, let's take another phone call, Michael. Let's go to Joe calling from Purcellville, Virginia. Joseph, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Yeah, hi, Chris. I'm a degreed engineer, and I've studied these bridges. And there's a lot that should have been done before to prevent this from happening. Most bridges of this type have what they call a barrier. It's a bumper that goes around the bridge. Actually, they call it a dolphin. If you have a small bridge, they'll put just wood piling. But larger bridges require some concrete, stones, and so on. And this bridge had two problems. One, it didn't really have a big enough bumper. And number two, it had a single point failure, where if you hit this one piling, the whole thing, the whole thing goes down.
Uh-huh.
Right now, they're spending close to $100 million to fix the Delaware Memorial Bridge from having the same problem. Something like this happened in Florida, where a ship, a cargo ship, I guess, hit one of the piers down in, I believe it was the west coast of Florida.
Yeah, it was Tampa, 1980. Yeah,
Right,
and it was a big
right.
catastrophe.
So who's responsible for this? First of all, the cargo ships are getting bigger and bigger, and whatever they had there, I couldn't see anything on the video. I couldn't see any barrier. They had a barrier, believe it or not, about a little around the antenna. You could see that in the video. There was no barrier, and a bridge is part of a system where you design a flow-through of cargo ships, and you got to assume that they're going to go off course. And if you don't provide a barrier, it's common sense. You'll knock down one of these piers, and the whole bridge goes into the water.
Right.
So who's responsible? Probably the city of Baltimore. Responsible. They're saving money on this.
Huh.
So that's the real problem. And there are many bridges like this in the United States. Philadelphia apparently is really starting to straighten out their situation.
Now, you've studied bridges. You're an engineer, and you said, I've studied these bridges. Now, not necessarily the key bridge specifically, but in your professional life, you've looked at such bridges like this, and one of the things you've learned is about vulnerabilities, and I've learned about this in the last 24 hours, and you're right, the pier now, the way the ship hit this one pier, and it took a hard right, as we were just discussing with Doug, who's a Merchant Marine Academy graduate and a longtime seafaring man, and you're looking at this, and you've looked at the video, no doubt, and you saw this giant ship take a hard turn to starboard, takes a hard right turn, and crashes into this one pier, which is unprotected by, as you said, dolphins, bumpers, barriers, which you might expect to see in a busy harbor, right?
Exactly. It's particularly since the cargo ships are now getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
They probably had something, but I couldn't see anything in the video. So maybe they had probably some stuff right close by. If you look at the George Washington Bridge or any of the other major bridges, they all have protection.
Yeah.
Now.
Because they're aware that big ships come along, and those big ships could be a problem for the bridge. But right here in one of the busiest harbors in the United States of America, this vulnerable bridge did not have these dolphins, did not have the barriers, the bumpers.
Exactly.
And so that, as an engineer, that your eye was drawn to that. And I also saw that reported this morning that you would expect there to be protection around the foundations of the bridge, and there were no protections around the foundation of the bridge.
Yeah, they're going to discover several other bridges that have similar problems. As I said, they're racing to finish the Delaware Memorial Bridge, and they're pouring $100 million, $90 to $100 million to straighten that out. This is a very vulnerable situation for the infrastructure of the United States.
Yeah. Joe, listen, I thank you. I thank you for calling in. Any final thought?
Yeah, we got to spend our money on fixing this before it can be used as a terrorist-type tactic.
Yeah.
If we have, this is extremely vulnerable. It doesn't cost you that much. We got plenty of rocks. You can put it right around everything.
Yeah. Yeah, and the ship, whatever was going on with this gigantic ship, became incredibly destructive, incredibly quickly, and perhaps we shouldn't be shocked by the fact that the electricity went out. They lost control of the ship, and this incident happened. But perhaps we should be asking a lot of questions about it too.
You got to assume ships lose control. Period. It happens all the time.
Yeah? Okay. All right, Joe, thank you, my friend. Thank you for the call. Yeah, we'll all learn a bunch about this. You know, these are a couple of areas most people don't know a lot about. Doug knows a lot about it. Joe knows a lot about it. People call in. Experts What a country. I love this place. We're at 888-630-9625. Now, the great Washington Examiner here in Washington, D.C. is a newspaper, unlike the Washington Post, which is Democrat Party propaganda. March 8th of 2024, the Washington Examiner by Misty Severi. Misty Severi. The headline is, House Investigation Finds Chinese-Made Cranes at U.S. Ports Have Communications Gear Installed. Now, this is, I shared with you the story. My friend John sent along a story from last year, and just did a little quick research here. An investigation by the House Homeland Security Committee found that cranes made by China and installed in U.S. ports included communications equipment put in place without explanation. The investigation, which was also conducted by the House Select Committee on China, focused on 200 Chinese-made cranes at U.S. ports and facilities that included undocumented cellular modems that can be used for remote communication. Why would they be doing that? Are they peeking? Are they spying? Can it be used for anything other than phone calls? Because cranes don't make phone calls, as a rule. Our committee's investigation found vulnerabilities in cranes at U.S. ports that could allow the Chinese Communist Party to not only undercut trade competitors through espionage, but disrupt supply chains and the movement of cargo, devastating our nation's economy, House Homeland Security Chairman Mark Green, again, Republican from Tennessee, said in a statement. Without a swift sea change, we will continue to gift the Chinese Communist Party with an easy means of infiltrating our critical infrastructure on their quest for global dominance, which is exactly what's going on. So nearly 80% of the cranes, U.S. ports, Chinese-made. That sounds like bad policy, doesn't it? I think it does.